Hi there, I am Pamela Petrick, also known as the Dietless Dieting Coach, and I am a registered nurse, a certified holistic health coach, and busy women come to me when they are ready to ditch the yo-yo dieting, the constant weight regain, and the fatigue, and they are ready for natural, holistic strategies for their unique bodies so they can release the weight, keep it off, and feel light and free. And when they work with me via my Beyond the Fork Academy, we customize their journey for their own unique body. And so I am on a mission for you to find those solutions that are natural and holistic that'll work for your unique body, which is exactly why I created the Beyond the Food Weight Loss Summit, specifically designed for women over 40 who are ready to break free from the constant weight regain and nothing's working for you. This summit is different because I'm bringing together experts who will share their top strategies to help you release weight naturally without extreme diets, restrictions, or extreme workouts, and help you to achieve lasting weight loss and transform your health for good. Plus, every expert is giving you a free gift, all specifically geared for women over 40. Do you have your pen ready? It's time for our next featured expert for the Beyond the Food Weight Loss Summit, Real Solutions for Women Over 40.
Hi, my name is Cindi Lockhart, and I am an integrative and functional nutritionist, and I'm here to talk to you about the toxic truths, how our hidden chemicals in the environment can hijack our weight as well as our hormone balance. So let's dive in. Let's first start with how do we identify where do these chemicals come from? Bottom line, we are all toxic. We can't get away from the toxicity, but we can help our body detox and support our detox pathways. So we are what we eat, what we drink, what we breathe, what we absorb, and what we inhale, but we can't eliminate. So it's all about the detoxification. Now we can reduce our load, like what are we exposed to? We can reduce that, but we have to also support our detox pathways. So where do these toxin exposures come from? We got to really think about our past and our current exposures. So it can be where we live, it can be where we work, it can be what we use because our skin is our largest organ. That's the absorption. What's our air quality? What's our water quality? What's our food quality? So where do we work? I think about women in particular. We have hairstylists, we have therapists that are like massage therapists or you've got I can never say the word, like your skin practitioners. So a lot of the products that we're using in our occupation are giving us that exposure where we are inhaling but also absorbing it on our skin. Also, as I mentioned, where do we live? Where do we work? Where do we go to school if we're going to schools? We have to think about the location. How close is it to highways and vehicle exhaust? Maybe there's industry, there's mining, there's waste sites, there's landfills, there's nuclear sites, there's golf courses. How do you think they keep those greens so green? Parks, farms, and flight paths. So those are all things that can be scary to think about, like, gosh, I didn't even think about that. And sometimes we can't really change that because maybe we're not in a predicament to change where we work or change where we live. So we just, again, have to minimize our exposure and support our detox pathways. What are we using on a daily basis in regards to cleaning products, personal products, cosmetics? What do we put on our lawn and garden? What are we using for pest control in our own homes and gardens, but also for our pets? And then we talked about clean air, water, food, and soil. And when you think about women, we are way more susceptible than men. And part of it is our body burden. So we use cosmetics, we use personal products. We're typically the ones who are doing the cleaning. Think about the feminine hygiene products, our occupations. So scary is thinking about all of the products that we use and we put on our faces and our bodies. The average woman is leaving the home in the morning with over 185 chemicals. based off of 12 or more personal products. Because think about hair, our skin, our cosmetics, our deodorants. We use a lot of products. And then feminine hygiene. This was something that was just like, whoa, this was an aha for me not that long ago. Not even really contemplating, especially tampons, because those are going right into an orifice that's going to get into our system. And so we average use 10,000 different pads and tampons in our lifetime. So we have to make sure that it's organic and not full of chemical synthetic additives. Also, feminine wipes and washes and sprays, that's going into a very fragile location that increases our absorption. Occupations, as we talked about earlier. Plus, women, we're just genetically going to have more body fat than men. And where do toxins love to hang out? In fatty tissues. So we're going to accumulate more. So what's the problem with regulation? We think that the government should be protecting us. But the sad truth is that we have over 85,000 chemicals registered for use in the United States. Over 7,000 new chemicals are added each year, but only 1 to 2% are thoroughly tested for safety on our own human health, but also on the environment. And most of these research studies are looking at one toxin at a time. Well, we just talked about how we may have over 185 unique chemicals on our body in one day. So one toxin isn't going to fit because we have what's called the cocktail effect. We're exposed to a multitude of different chemicals at any one time. So we really don't have the research behind that. And then also the long-term low-level exposure that we're also exposed as well. So it can be, this myriad of chemicals, but also low dose over a long time. What's the impact? So some of the classes of toxins that we need to know about, one is considered an obesogen, and that's exactly what these toxins do, is these are specific chemicals that promote obesity by increasing the number of fat cells that we have in our body and or how much fat each fat cell can carry. It's also shown to shift our energy balance so that we're storing more of the calories by altering our basal metabolism, our gut microbiome, and our hormonal control of appetite and satiety. And this is despite maintaining your normal diet and exercise regime. So you may have like kind of the same thing going on. It's like, what's happening? Why am I gaining body fat? This is one of those hidden truths. Then we have endocrine disrupting chemicals. And that's exactly what they do. They disrupt our endocrine function, whether it's estrogen, androgens, testosterone, or thyroid. And how it does that is by mimicking or antagonizing our action of hormones, or they interfere with the production, the transport, the metabolism of our hormones. So what we're seeing is like the studies and the researchers out there have really been mapping out our rates of obesity with the rates of chemicals being released into our environment in our exposure. And they're showing a direct alignment with the rates in metabolic disease and obesity with the increase in environmental chemical production and exposure. So we know there's a connection. So we have to be aware of this and know what can we do about it. And that's why we're here. So what are some of the health risks of the endocrine disrupting chemicals and the obesogen? So these are symptoms and conditions to think about. If any of these relate to you, then we have to really start thinking, okay, where is this coming from? How do I mitigate what I'm exposed to? And how do I support my body's detox efforts? So if you have chronic fatigue, you have chronic pain, these toxins are targeting your mitochondria, which are your energy powerhouses in every cell of your body. So it's damaging those energy producing organelles. Weight and body fat gain, especially when nothing else is changing. Insulin resistance and diabetes, they're endocrine disruptors. So you can be going along life just fine. Like your insulin is low, your hemoglobin A1C level is low, which are indicators for insulin resistance or diabetes or pre-diabetes. But then all of a sudden, boom, you're in a pre-diabetic or a diabetic range. What happened? We have to think toxins. thyroid dysfunction. So women, we are very prone to thyroid dysfunction, and that is known as the sentinel gland. What that means is our thyroid is way more sensitive to the impact of toxins than even our liver. Sex hormone imbalance. So thinking of premenstrual syndrome, polycystic ovarian syndrome, infertility, even endometriosis, uterine fibroids, anything that indicates a hormone imbalance. Then we have to think about kind of the neurotransmitter component, depression, anxiety, headaches, insomnia, not being able to fall asleep and or stay asleep. Dysbiosis is bacterial imbalance in your gut. So your gut is your foundation to health. Everything starts and ends in the gut. Your bacteria are very metabolically active, so it supports your risk for diabetes and weight gain and body fat. So we want to make sure we have that right balance. Hormone sensitive cancers like breast cancer. So here are some of the common forms of endocrine disrupting chemicals. So they do accelerate our reproductive aging and also the age of menopause. They've shown to contribute to early menopause, which is anything before the age of 45, particularly before 40. So pesticides, PFAS, your PCBs, your cigarette smoke, your bisphenols, your phthalates. Some of those are big words. We're going to talk about where they're coming from. So pesticides are chemicals used to kill or prevent the growth of insects, rodents, fungus, and weeds. They're used to protect our crops and preserve our food. We use the second highest amount of pesticides on our crops globally next to China. Pesticide residues in your food are the number one source, so really important to go organic when it comes especially to your fruits and your vegetables. Also in contaminated water. So we're going to talk about the quality of our water. So it's really important that we have clean water and that we're filtering it. And I'm going to share with you how you can determine what it is and then how do you filter it. PFAS are your perfluorinated compounds. That's a long term, but think about these being your stain and water resistant coatings. So on carpets, on clothing, on furniture, we think that's great, right? I don't want stains. How can I repel that? Or how can I repel the water? So like a raincoat. However, that's using PFAS chemicals, anti-wrinkle. Who wants to iron? I hate ironing. But if I get anti-wrinkle clothing, that means I'm bringing more chemicals on board. Oil resistant coatings. This is what we got to think about. Takeout containers, pizza boxes. 40% of our US budget is spent on food away from home. So we are bringing a lot of food in and not cooking ourselves at home. So that's giving us risk to more PFAS and endocrine disrupting chemicals. Also microwave popcorn bags, that inner bag, because it's trying to repel stains and oils, right? Non-stick pans. Who wants to take time scrubbing the pan? We want non-stick. However, that means PFAS. We also find these perfluorinated compounds in personal care and cleaning products as well as in our water. These are known as forever chemicals. So a lot of them are no longer produced because we know of the detriment to our health and metabolism. However, they're forever chemicals. That means they are going to accumulate and stay in the environment and stay in our bodies unless we are doing something to actively detoxify. PCBs are polychlorinated biphenyls. Again, a long name, but these are used in industrial and commercial applications. They're found in landfills. Their production was banned in 1979 by the Environmental Protection Agency due to the findings of birth defects and cancer rates. However, this is also a forever chemical. So even though we're no longer producing them, they're still in our bodies, they're still in the environment. Some of them have a half-life of 20 years. So that means they can hang out for at least 40. That's a long time. Where do we tend to find the PCBs? In our food supply. So fish, meat, and dairy. So a lot of your animal products. Cigarette smoke is 12% of adult US women are smoking these days. And the cigarette smoke contains about 7,000 different chemicals. So when we're currently smoking, that increases our risk of early menopause up to 50%, as well as severity of hot flashes. Now, if we stop smoking 10 or more years prior to menopause, that can reduce the risk of early menopause and a lot of those unfavorable side effects. Now, there is conflicting evidence regarding the impact that passive smoking, like were you exposed, like my mom smoked a lot growing up. We don't really know how that's going to impact us later in life. Now, here are two very common chemicals, bisphenols and phthalates. One thing to know about these are not necessarily known as forever. They don't bioaccumulate in our body, but they're ubiquitous, meaning we're constantly exposed to them on a daily basis. So that's where our levels start to build up in our bodies. So your bisphenols are the hard plastics, the hard shatterproof plastics. Your phthalates are the flexible, malleable plastics. So let's go back to the bisphenols. Where you're going to find these, the predominant sources are going to be the reusable water bottles and infant bottles. Even think about those big water coolers that are in our workplace. Those are plastic and bisphenols. Reusable food containers. So look on all of your products. You're going to see the recycling codes. You can see that up at the top right. We do not want number 3, number 6, or number 7, because that means we've got some bisphenols or phthalates. These are endocrine disrupting, hormone disrupting chemicals. Also, epoxy resins. What does that mean? We get those in dental sealants. So we know we get mercury in the metal fillings. Well, if you get the dental sealants and composites, those tend to have more of the bisphenols. Or think about the Invisalign aligners. I wore those for, gosh, probably 9 months. I had my BPA tested and it was super high because those are in our mouth. And your oral cavity is, again, a great avenue of getting into the system because it's right there going in. Can linings, whether it's food or beverage containing. Also cash register receipts. So the thermal paper. I love seeing the cash register tenants who are wearing gloves. Like, you got it. You're smart. You're not touching those on a day-to-day basis. So we don't need the receipts, right? They can email them to us if we need them, but you really want to avoid taking them with you and getting them on your hands. Because again, you're going to absorb that through your skin. And BPA free is not better. I've had many clients tell me, hey, I've got a reusable water bottle. It's plastic, but it's BPA free. Well, BPA free means they're using some type of derivative like BPS or BPF. Those are just as hormone disrupting and toxic as BPA, if not more. So we just got to get away from the plastic. Again, it's everywhere. So where can we make the changes? Phthalates, you're malleable, flexible. This is, some things that we're not going to really think about, like vinyl flooring or carpet tiles, also in our food packaging. So it's more of that flexible type that's covering our meats, covering our possibly produce, covering cheeses, also your takeout containers, also in raincoats, inflatables, and pacifiers. Personal care products like hair, cosmetics, toothbrushes, and nail polish. One thing you really want to be looking out for is that word fragrance. So if you are looking at the reading ingredients on a food item is hard enough, but when you look at an ingredient list on anything else, personal products, cleaning products, it's a science project. It's hard to know what is, but if it says fragrance, that means phthalate. Fragrance is proprietary. So that manufacturing company does not need to disclose what is in it, but what we do know is fragrance equals phthalate. All right, so now we know where is it coming from everywhere. How do we minimize our exposure? I know it can be overwhelming. It can be really scary when you start thinking about this, but please know, we can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. So we can support our body at any point in time. So let's first start with the liver. Because the liver is our predominant organ of detox. And so to protect the liver and its ability to metabolize and detoxify is we want to limit alcohol because that really puts a lot of strain on the liver. For women, less than 1 drink a day is recommended. And what that means is 5 ounces of wine, 1.5 ounces of a liqueur, or a 12-ounce beer. That's 1 cocktail. So really limiting to less than 1 a day. And then proper nutrition, which we're going to talk about. So I wanted to show this because you go through these different pathways to detoxify through the liver. So remember, we talked about most toxins are fat loving. They're going to seek out our fatty tissue, whether it's our nervous system, like our brain, our spinal cord, our nerves, and then also our body fat. So we have to break this down. And so we break it down through this phase one, which are enzymes produced by the liver to make an intermediate metabolite, which ends up being more toxic than it started with. So we have to really quickly follow up with phase two, which is a conjugation or a binding process. So we're going to bind that metabolite. We're going to make it more water soluble so we can get rid of it. So it can bind to bile and get eliminated through stool, or we're going to have that water soluble toxin now being able to be filtered through the kidneys and eliminated through urine. And so when you look at these two pathways, I just have it circled for you. Those are all nutrients. Those are nutrition that we absolutely need, including a lot of amino acids. So we need protein. We need our B vitamins. We need our vitamin C. We need our glutathione in both of these. So nutrition is super important. So when we think about the broad spectrum of nutrition, we have to go back to real food, as organic as you can. And even in the case of your animal proteins, which we need protein for detoxification, it's more important that you're going grass-fed, pastured, and wild-caught than organic, because organic may still be fed inflammatory grains. But your conventional feedlot animals are given hormones, are given pesticides, are given antibiotics, none of that, which is good for our own hormone systems. Non-GMO whole food. So whole food meaning one ingredient, there's no label. If there is a label, it's a very minimized ingredient list and you can identify and pronounce everything on it. 60% of our diets here in America are ultra processed foods, which I call Franken foods. So if you turn that product around, it's in a package, which we're going to eat foods in packages. But if you see these ingredients, like, I don't even know what that is, I can't even pronounce it, we need to put it back. Because our ultra processed foods are chock full of chemicals. And these are engineered to trigger the reward centers in our brain to make us eat more and more and more. We never get that satiety signal checked off. So really go back to whole food. And you want your plants, colorful vegetables and fruits. You want your proteins, you want your healthy fats. Those phytonutrients, which are your colorful vegetables and fruit, super important for neutralizing the oxidative stress and inflammation that toxins will deliver to us. They're going to contribute that. Dirty dozen, we're going to look at that next. I'll explain what that means. Lots of fiber. Now, more is not necessarily better. So you can see 25 to 40 grams. We used to do 100 grams in Ancestry because we didn't have any ultra processed foods. But what we do know is like if we have too high of fiber, it can bind critical minerals. So I would go 25, 40 grams a day. So that's your full foods. That's going to be your vegetables. That's going to be your fruits. That's going to be your seeds like flaxseed, hemp seed, sunflower seeds, chia seeds. It's also going to be your beans and legumes. Add fresh and dried spices and herbs. That's a lost science, but very therapeutic. And for cost savings, buy local and buy in season. Here's the Dirty Dozen versus Clean 15 list. If you haven't seen this before, Environmental Working Group, so EWG.org is a nonprofit organization. It does its due diligence on helping us understand what's clean in regards to our food, our personal products, our cleaning products. How do we support that detoxification by lessening our burden and our load? So in this case, your Dirty Dozen are the most dirty crops, meaning they have the most pesticide and chemicals applied. So super important to prioritize those as organic. The Clean 15 have the least amount of pesticide and chemical. If you can go organic for all, awesome. If you can't, prioritize the Dirty Dozen list and go conventional on the Clean 15. This list changes very minimally each year, but they come out with a new list every year. So fiber, we talked about we want to up our fiber. So you've got soluble and insoluble. Both are important. Soluble dissolves in water and body fluids. Insoluble does not. Soluble will form a gel-like material and bind. So it has been shown to help with blood sugar regulation, cholesterol regulation. And then insoluble is more about absorbing fluid into the colon and helping to bulk the stool. But it also helps keep us more satisfied. So it helps us with weight management. So you can see it's your fruits, your vegetables, your seeds, your nuts, also some grains. And when we talk grains, whole grain is critical. Whole grain is only going to have one ingredient that was actually created by a plant. If you see something like oat bread or a whole grain pasta, it may have more than just one ingredient. So that means it's processed. It's processed from the flour of a grain. That's different. So we do want to go more with an actual whole grain, one ingredient, a lot more fiber, a lot more phytonutrients. Your legumes are on here. Water. Your most important nutrient is water. We have to make sure it is clean. You know, you might have tap water, you might have well water. Tap water tends to be contaminated with a lot of these chemicals we're talking about, even pharmaceuticals. I have a client in the Chicago area who we did this test on their tap water and a ton of chemicals, but including testosterone. So even an androgen got into their water because think about how many people live there. So it's always been kind of known, hey, you're going to be getting your neighbor's antidepressant or oral contraceptives in your water because our municipal water systems just don't filter that. And then your well water tends to be more tainted with more with your bacteria and viruses versus a lot of the chemicals, but it can depend. So if you have tap water, you can go to ewg.org/tap water and just input your zip code and you can see all of the contaminants and how extensive they are in your particular area. And then it will give you kind of a lay of the land of the different types of filtration and each of those chemicals that would be filtered out based off of that. If you have well water, I don't have that on here, but you could go to Tap Water Score. So tap, TAP, waterscore.com, and you can order a kit to test your well water. In regards to filtration, reverse osmosis and distilled filtration are thought to be the best in regards to removing the majority of contaminants, but it also removes a lot of those critical minerals. So you will want to replace those back in. And then a kitchen sink is the best way, you know, so you can get whole system, like whole house systems, but that's going to use like 3 times the amount of water. So it can be a waste of water. So why not just go right to the source? So your kitchen sink, you can put systems under there, or there's like countertop units if you rent, even for distillation, there's countertop units. So that could be what you're drinking and what you're cooking with. And then we got to think about our showers and our tubs too, because your skin is your largest organ and that will absorb water if you're soaking in a tub or you're taking a lot of showers. So there are different like tub filter balls or shower filters that you can also get to support that. So avoiding bottled water and plastic, you know, disposable, reusable water jugs and coolers. Best to use glass or stainless steel. And there are so many different options out there in a lot of the stores, like the department type stores or online. So you can find something for everyone. A lot of the glass ones are thick and then they have a silicone surround. So they're very unlikely to break. We want to limit the plastics. So reduce your intake of packaged foods, foods that are wrapped or packed in plastic, and food and beverages in cans or plastic bottles. I know there's a lot in there. So we just really got to think through that. And even if they are wrapped, when you come home, you could unwrap it and then store it maybe in paper. So there is paper-based parchment paper. There's also plant-based Ziploc type bags. So they're made out of plants, not plastics. So look for that. And then storage, a lot of different glass options. So you don't need to use plastic storage. You could use ball mason jars even. So when you're looking at cans, you know, a lot of our products have shifted from a can to a glass or to a box. So that helps. But otherwise, look for the brands that actually state BPA, BPS, phthalate-free can linings. So that will help lessen, especially with beans. That's a big one, right? Where we don't want to get that from bulk and have to soak and then cook and then, that's a lot of work. We talked about avoiding the plastics with recycling codes 3, 6, or 7. Shop more in bulk and store in glass. You can use safe natural cleaning and household products. Just white vinegar and water with some essential oils is effective and very cheap. Or borax. Organic lawn and garden care products. Again, it all depends on, again, what you're exposed to, what you're doing on a regular basis. HEPA air purifiers, no shoes rule. Do you know what those shoes touch when they're away from the home? We really want to ditch the shoes at the door. Avoid products with fragrance, change your furnace filter at least every 3 months. Go with the higher MERV filter because that's going to filter out a lot more of the toxins. I remember when we built our home a couple years ago, our contractor told us, you got to use a low MERV filter because otherwise your furnace will die a lot earlier. I'm like, hey, I'm going to use a higher MERV filter rating so that I don't die earlier. So we got to kind of prioritize. We need to kind of think about that. If you're living in an older home built before 1978, you need to think about your paint. More than likely it had lead in it. So did it just get painted over or wallpapered over? What's the status there? Bedding. You are detoxifying while you sleep, especially in your brain. You have a lymphatic system, so your brain is detoxing. So what you're laying on and sleeping in for a third of the day is super important. So think about all of the bedding, the pillows, your sheets, your mattress. Make sure that that is clean and organic. What else can we do? So there's a lot of organs of detox that you can see here. We're going to focus on the bowel, liver, and skin. Kidneys, it's all about adequate filtered water. So half of your body weight in ounces of water a day. Make sure that it's clean. Your lungs, clean air. So HEPA air purifiers, open the windows, provided you don't live in a toxic area. Deep breathing really helps to expire that carbon dioxide and toxins. The lymphatic system, it's like a very light webbing beneath your skin, so it doesn't take a lot. You could do some skin brushing. You could use a vibrational plate. For bowels, we need to optimize our microbiome, and that requires plant diversity. So we talked about all those different colorful plants, vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, legumes. It's all about diversity. So don't get in a food jag like a toddler where you're eating the same thing day in and day out. Change it up. You want to strive for over 30 unique types of plants weekly. That's diverse. Increasing your fruit and vegetable intake. We know that the average American maybe gets about 2.5 servings a day between vegetables and fruit. So we're not even meeting the minimum 5 a day. We should be at 7 to 10 for optimization of our health and hormone balance. So it's just a matter of like, how can I sprinkle them in to each meal, depending on what you're doing. That's also going to boost your fiber. So that's going to help with binding the toxins and getting rid of it through your GI tract. The gallbladder plays a role here. So your liver is going to produce bile, your gallbladder stores it and releases it when fat comes into the picture, whether it's through our food or through supplementation. So we want to make sure that that gallbladder and bile flow is optimal. So provided you don't have gallstones, we can increase our risk of these bile supportive foods like artichoke, beet, carrot, celery, ginger, leafy greens, bitter greens, apples, lemon, and turmeric. There's also cholagogues that increase bile flow. So dandelion, ginger, artichoke. Some might come in a supplement form. There's also the bile salts or ox bile or digestive bitters that help with bile flow. So everybody is unique. So make sure you're working with somebody to help guide you. We talked about liver detoxification. So it does entail proper nutrition, limitation of alcohol. In regards to sweating, so skin detox. So we can sweat with exercise, but sauna is going to be a little more regulated. And typically the recommendation for sauna is 10 to 20 minutes unless it's an infrared. So Finnish style is usually when you're alternating between hot and cold. So they're in a hot sauna and then they they cold plunge, and then they come back. So they alternate. And that's really good for the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system. So it's typically 1 to 3 sessions of heat for 5 to 20 minutes, interspersed with a cooling period. Infrared style sauna, typically between 20 and 60 minutes. And then a steam style is 5 to 10 minute sessions. But we got to be careful because with steam, you've got water. So there is a potential of mold and mildew, which is another type of toxin. What they found with sauna is you can excrete a lot of heavy metals and other toxins. So aluminum, arsenic, cadmium, lead, mercury, bisphenols. So we really want to see where can we get access to a sauna if you don't have an in-home sauna, and how often can you go? You know, if you can go at least 3 times a week, even 4, 5 times a week, depending on what, again, your body burden of these toxins are, it can be a very helpful detoxification tactic. So I hope that was eye-opening, enlightening, and inspiring, and not too overwhelming. And I wish you a very healthy detox journey. Thank you.